I've been playing the crap out of Darktide.
Compliments of the god!
We have to be tested. Now I see how veterancy was earned.
It's what I'm here!
Alright, so since my last project, I said that I was going to take a 2-3 week break before I started my next cosplay project. The idea was not just to take a breather, but also to, you know, research what I wanted to do next, get inspired, play some games. I ended up playing Darktide and ended up playing more Darktide and just kept playing Darktide. At first I wanted to really make something from Darktide. I checked like all the character outfits, but nothing really kind of stuck out to me that was like really iconic or anything. Nothing like a Space Marine or something. So my next thought was to try and look around for you know, monsters and stuff. Most of the monsters in Darktide are all like your base level enemies. You know, you're not going to have any Plague Marines or anything like that, which would be kind of cool, but I never really found any miniatures that really stuck out to me. It did give me ideas for looking around in that direction, but I think that might be farther down the road. I do like the idea of the mouths and tentacles and stuff coming out of the armor plates. That's something I could definitely pull off. But somewhere around there, I was reminded of this laundry list of props that I've always wanted to make back at the old house, but I couldn't because we didn't have the room. I was like, well, before I start something, you know, I have like 2 weeks. Why don't I go down the basement and, you know, churn one of them out? But I was kind of worried that I wouldn't get something done in time, or I'd have to buy something specific. So while I'm playing Darktide, you know, I'm seeing all these Servo Skulls just floating around, and I'm like, yeah, Servo Skulls, they're quick, easy. I have a ton of skulls in the basement. So I was like, okay, I'll give that a shot. I've always wanted to make a Servo Skull. They're one of the things that's always been on my list of things I wanted to do, and I already have skulls, so I don't have to really make anything. The only downside, though, is that every skull I have down here is tiny. I mean, this is an adult skull. If anything, this is a kid's skull. I don't know a whole lot in terms of the lore when it comes to servitors and servo skulls, but I'm pretty sure they don't use kids' skulls. So yeah, this kind of posed a couple problems for me. First problem was that I was gonna have to just downscale everything. Foam is already thick as it is, so everything is gonna have to be even smaller. I'll lose details. Things will end up looking really bulky, and I could have ordered a skull online, but if I did that by the time it'd show up, it'd already be time for me to start my next project, and this is another press for time kind of thing. I mean, granted, I guess when it comes to prop making and cosplay, for me, everything's always pressed for time. I don't know if that's considered an excuse or just how I get myself to finish projects. I could have also made a skull too out of foam. It would have been doable. It would have been a lot better to use a Halloween skull as my base rather than starting from scratch. That would be like an extra couple days on the build schedule, and that's not something I could afford either, so baby skull it is. So once I decided that's what I was going to do, started playing more Darktide to get references, and more I'm looking around at Servo Skulls in the game, I'm like, you know, everyone has done a Servo Skull. Anyone that's done a Warhammer costume or cosplay has done a Servo Skull. But that data interrogator in the game, I've never seen that before. I'm like, and it looks kind of cool, so I'll give that a try. So as far as reference materials go, I tried scouring the internet and couldn't find any photos on the game's website. No concept art anywhere. The game itself doesn't have like a model viewer. I'm not saying that's like a expected standard these days, but it'd be nice. So I had to go the old-fashioned route and just take a ton of screenshots, which meant playing Darktide even more. But I'd have to play several matches with it because first I'd have to get an angle from my point of view, the character's point of view, every angle I could get, and then I'd have to wait for someone else to use it in another match so I could get the right side, and wait for someone to use it in another match, get the left side, wait for another match, get the back side. I'm pretty sure people were wondering why in the world I'm standing on a table crouched staring at them while they're just waiting for them to pick up the freaking thing, when they could have been like, you could do that yourself. Like, no, I'm getting references. So I had a feeling I was going to have to like add to the skull to make things bigger. So when I started off with the optical inserts in the eyes, and immediately I figured out that the skull in the game has an exaggerated expression to fit those optical inserts. So it's got almost like a surprised look on it. I mean, it has to, because those are pure circles that got to be in there. Your socket's got to be bigger to fit. So fortunately, I was looking for a good reason to use some of this stuff again. If you've seen my other videos, specifically my Purity Seals video, I went on about how much I did not like this. I was a little harsh and I spoke a little too soon. This stuff's actually not that bad. In my previous video, I made a couple complaints saying that it didn't seem to dry fast enough and didn't seem to dry at all. I put it like a hair above Model Magic. I take all that back. After I made my Purity Seals, I left a clump of this sit, and like a week later, it was hard as a rock. So it's good stuff, it just takes longer to dry. But it did dry, and it dried thoroughly. So Michael's craft foam, good stuff. Or okay stuff. Good enough stuff. So I built up around the eyes, like the eyebrows. I built up on the cheekbones to kind of bring all that out. That way the eye inserts would fit in and be more recessed. But this was one of those issues that I ran into where I tried to make things as detailed as I could, but because everything was so much smaller, I couldn't get the details in that I wanted. It still gets the job done for what you can see, but for what I wanted to get into it, I wasn't getting. If it was an actual size, I probably could have, because then the optical inserts would be bigger and I could get the finer details in with real thin foam. Then after that, I started working on the plating on the back and on the top of the skull. That way I could kind of really gauge how big everything else around was going to be, because that was probably like the biggest. It took up the most real estate on the plastic skull. It gave me an idea on how far I needed to scale down the actual push lever on the top of the head that you'd push in to engage the skull. I had to keep trimming it down farther and farther. It was such a small little handle, because it's such a small little skull. After that, I started doing some more side mounting, or side details. So the mountings for the spider legs, and the little hose on the side of the head. The hose on the side of the head was just a very large foam dowel. I think one of the larger sizes you can get, but obviously it was so dense that I could not get it to conform to the shape of the skull. So not only did I have to hollow out a little bit of it, but I had to do a bunch of V-cuts in it to get the whole thing to bend real tight. The mounting points for the spider legs was just a couple layers of foam and then just dribbled it all smooth. I made sure I gave it a lip too, that way everything would be kind of recessed when I actually put the spider legs in. As far as like the cylinder in the mouth, that was, even though it was like a really simple shape, it was also very tricky because the screenshots I got could only show me so much, and I don't know exactly what that thing is. I'm assuming it's some kind of like an Enigma machine where it just like does like a mechanical math solving problem kind of thing. I got as close as I could, just adding layers of beveled and reversed beveled, non-beveled edges and different diameter freaking circles, and I added as many details as I could to the sides, stuff that ends up even getting covered up. And it was around this time too then I started actually cutting the hole out in the base of the skull, because not only did I want that thing to be recessed inside the skull, but I figured it also has a bunch of orange lights inside of it that stick out from like holes in the heads and then the eye sockets. So I figured I'd take some orange Halloween LEDs I got from Walmart last year, and I just crammed them inside. And then when you turn it on, after everything was all done and painted, you know, the light would only protrude from those holes. So to hold the battery pack then for the LEDs, I just made like a little box out of foam and glued it inside. That way it just fits up inside it, and I have like a little tiny door that holds it. And then came the spider legs, which were probably the biggest issue I had with the entire thing. So my original idea was that it's like I could I finally hook up my 3D printer and make articulated arms, because I have 3D files that I bought a while back for like actual giant suits, like Warhammer suits and stuff. I never had a chance to use it yet, but I was like, oh, this would be a good time for me to finally print that out and give it a try. I ran into a couple big problems with that though. The biggest problem was that the spider legs bent in a different way. So immediately that just eliminated that entirely. Second, even if they did bend the same, the internal mechanisms for the articulated fingers, they would be visible, and they are nothing like what you see on the actual 3D model. So did I go for something that worked, or did I go for something that was accurate? Plus, considering how pressed for time I was, if I was to 3D print it anyway, it'd probably take 2 weeks just to get everything printed and assembled anyway, and I wouldn't have anything else done. So I want to get this thing done by the first of the year, so that was out of the question. Plus, if I was going to make it articulated, I would have to make some kind of mechanism inside, because what I wanted was when you engage the actual skull in the game, you're taking this handle and just shoving it into the head, and I don't know what that does, but it springs the spider legs to life, and you throw it on and it attaches. So I would have had to come up with some kind of mechanism, probably just like an up and down mechanism that like gear or some kind, and I'm pretty sure my Fusion 360 year trial is up, so I couldn't use that. Yeah, it would taken forever. So I figured I'll just make them in their fixed position, in the carry position, so when the character first pulls it out, the legs are all in tight. It's like, that's the position I'll make them. That way it looks like, you know, you just pulled it out. I mean, if you ever do like a photo shoot or something with it, you know, you could always have it like you're about ready to press it or something. That was issue number 1. Issue number 2 turned into being, originally I made everything with foam. And, yeah. And so not only is this very bulky, but the skull is small. It's, you know, like a kid's skull. So this is going to look even bigger on top of that. I mean, yeah, so imagine 4 of these. You know, it's just, it's huge. And on top of that, it's also very, very flexible, you know, because it's all foam. Everything sagged. Everything was real big. I didn't like it at all. And at the same time, I was kind of like deliberating on what I should actually do. And I think my girlfriend was down in the basement, and she mentioned that she was like, "Well, what about those popsicle sticks they sell in the craft section?" And I'm like, "Yeah, it's thin enough. I could trim them and cut them down." I'm like, "That would work. That would really work." So after work in the morning, stopped in the craft section, because it would have been New Year's Eve. So yeah, Walmart would have been closing that day. Went down, I picked up like every wood supply they had. Wood dowels, wood popsicle sticks of varying sizes. I figured if I don't need it, it'll go in the storeroom, and then if I ever need it, I have it. And they worked amazing. I could actually trim most of it with scissors, but it was also still rigid enough that I could have everything stay in its position. It brought down the bulk a lot. It I don't know how many more compliments I can give it. They turned out a lot better, and that's what ended up in the final product. Let's see, after that just became a bunch more small details. All the little hoses to kind of connect everything. I made the little teeth gear on the little Enigma machine. After that came just time for paint, or prep and paint. I just gave it a real quick coat of quick seal just to fill in any gaps that I didn't have smooth enough. I had half a can of Plasti Dip, and I was going to use that for my whole base coat, and it barely covered half of it. So the next day I just sat down for a couple hours and just painted the entire thing black by hand with black acrylic paint. It took forever because the whole thing was assembled and I had to get in every single nook and cranny, and every time I thought that I had gotten everything, I missed something entirely and had to start and, you know, check one angle, get it, flip another around, check another angle, get that. Every time I thought I had everything, I found another spot. Even when I was already in the middle of painting something else, I was still touching it up. Once I had everything black, though, it became just like your standard model painting. So if you've painted Warhammer miniatures, this is all standard fare. If you've painted resin models, same thing. Started with a base coat, so everything was black. I did deepest color I could get. I did the skull first, so it was like dark brown, you know, and then light brown, then dark tan, light tan. You know, each time I go up higher, I do less and less and less surface, hitting only the high points on the skull. Everything else mechanical on the skull. Spider legs, the Enigma machine, the eye sockets, all the hoses, it all used the same exact silvers. So what I used was, you can get this at Walmart in the acrylic, in like the acrylic paint section, and like the crafts section. It's their metallic paint. It's very watery. You want to be insanely light with it because it will just light it right up. I messed that up on my first try, and afterwards I had to go over and blackwash everything, which meant I watered down a black acrylic paint, covered a section, took a tissue paper, and I just wiped it. Anything that was in a crack that I couldn't reach, that stayed black, and I did that a couple times to try and darken certain spots up. And then after that, it didn't look like it really helped much, but then I highlighted the ends with a slightly brighter color. Same thing though, same style of metallic paint. It's got a little bit of a shine to it. After that, it was done, yeah. And this be our final product. the game, you know, you'd pull this out, take the lever, and you'd push that into his head, and all of a sudden then these legs would just kick out. And then you take this little spiky bit, kind of like RoboCop, and then just into a machine. And then his legs would just, you know, they would clip back on. And then this little tooth gear thingy here would then engage into the Enigma machine, and then the gears would start spinning and it'd start doing its mechanical math. Yeah, you can definitely see how the LEDs are definitely, you can't really make it out too much, but on the top, yeah, they're kind of lit up there too. Insanely quick build, probably about a week and a half maybe. I'm insanely happy with it. I mean, I wasn't expecting a miracle. This is more of just something fun that I haven't seen anyone do before, but, well, not this early yet, but would this be the first Darktide prop? But, yeah. Coming up next will probably end up being my my costumes for Sci-Fi Valley Con, which will be in June, so that'll be a slow series of videos. You know, till then, in the Emperor's name. Or would it be more like this?